This is Page Editor. It's a text editor written in AppleSoft by Dr. Bruce Howell. It was originally published in the February 1985 edition of Nibble Magazine. By any standard, Page Editor is very simple, but for an underprivileged kid toying around with his most prized possession, an Apple IIe that had seen better days, it was like manna from heaven. Let me take you back. Way back. Sorry, no flashbacks. You'll have to live with me. Actors are expensive. One boring spring weekend in 1994, I did what kids from the bad part of town did. I went to the gas station and used my saved up lunch money for snacks. What'd you think I was gonna do? Egg a house or something? On a whim, I picked up a trader's paper. If you're not familiar with them, I don't blame you, but the idea is really simple. Think of Craigslist, but tactile. I would flip through them from time to time to see the weird things people advertised. Broken outboard motors, boxes of kittens, gently used socks, you know, the same kind of weird stuff you see today. An ad caught my eye and I flushed with hope, but I tamped down my excitement as I had seen these before. Used computers for sale, half a state away, insanely expensive with absolutely no chance of ever owning one. But interest kept me reading. 2 computers, disk drives, printer, monitor, modem, books, discs. Wow, nice bit of kit this guy wants to get rid of. Too bad I'll never... Wait a second. The seller was local, and he was asking $400 for everything. It seemed like this poor kid might actually have a chance. Like Ralphie and his Red Ryder, carbine action, 200-shot, range model air rifle, it was one thing I wanted, an Apple II computer. But it was even better, because there were 2 for sale. It was like getting the leg lamp right along with the rifle. I think it's fair to assume that I didn't buy snacks that day. I clutched that paper tight as my legs pedaled fast to get home to beg my mom. I pleaded and I bargained and I worked out a deal. I doubled my house chore workload indefinitely, and in exchange she and Dad found a way, somehow, some way, to pay that nice man $400. $400 they really didn't have. My skin prickled when the man pulled up in front of the house. My mom practically leashed me to keep me from greeting him the way a yellow lab greets his owner after a trip to the mailbox. We brought everything inside and it all worked. I couldn't be happier. I had my very own apples and I loved them more than anything. But I quickly ran out of things to do. All I had is what came with it, which wasn't much. I couldn't afford to buy software, nor could I if I'd tried because the Apple II was commercially dead. My town didn't have internet and I didn't even know what a BBS was. We had no user groups and the public library had almost nothing about computers. I almost regretted the purchase, but I lucked out. My high school art teacher was an Apple fan and had brought some old magazines into class for making collages. A few of these were Nibble Magazines. Jackpot! I convinced her to let me have a few and the Apple II became interesting again. Right around the same time, my best friend and I got into space-themed Lego and had created an elaborate universe. We wanted a way to tie the computer into the Lego, but I didn't have any software that would fit the bill. Until Nibble Magazine, that is. Bruce Howell's Page Editor allowed us to create a detailed database about people, places, ships, stations, technology, you name it. As Steve Jobs envisioned, the Apple allowed us to create worlds. It was glorious. Pretty soon, though, we came up against some major limitations of the program. Only 8 pages of 40-column text, poor error handling, broken print routines, and a file index that easily desynced from the file system. Like taxes, data loss wasn't just imminent, it was predictable. I wanted to fix all of these things, especially adding 80-column text, but I ran into a virtual brick wall. Lack of resources. Sure, the program was written in AppleSoft, but I barely understood it. The internal workings might as well have been voodoo. Figuring out how page swapping worked or how the Apple II dealt with 80-column text? Forget about it. I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell. Still, I hacked in good old PR number 3 and changed the cursor handling math, but it was a mess. By the time I made it to that point, though, I got lucky. My parents were doing better, and for my 16th birthday, I got a PC with WordPad. It was magical! I manually retyped all those old files over to rich text documents and never looked back. Well, not never. Whoa! No more time travel. A couple years ago, I remembered that old program. I pulled out a disk, booted it up, and nostalgia struck. So I got out my old Nibble magazine and got to work. Christmas was coming, and I wanted to send my old friends something unique. Anyone can send a card or candy, but I wanted to do something special. I had resources now. I had the internet, full Apple II documentation, programmer's references, a virtual goldmine at my fingertips. I set my goal to add 80-column support to the program and send it to my friend as a Christmas gift with a copy of our entire LEGO database. And I did just that. Let's take a look at my new and improved page editor. The original Nibble article does a pretty good job of explaining how the program functions, so I'll just stick to the basics and what I've done to fix bugs or add features. To understand my changes, you have to understand how Page Editor moves text around. It can store 8 pages of 40-column text by using the high-res graphics memory as local storage for the pages. When you tell it to change pages, it uses the move routine from the monitor firmware to copy the right page straight into text display memory. This implementation is WAS-level genius. It's simple and it's elegant. However, we run into a couple of problems. If you know your Apple II hardware, you know about screen holes. Long story short, the text display memory isn't linear or contiguous, leaving gaps that the video hardware doesn't use. The Apple uses these gaps to hold configuration info for cards installed in the slots. Page Editor doesn't take this into account, it just moves the whole text page, screen holes and all. Problems occur when you open files saved on one computer over on another computer with different hardware. When you load up that file, it'll clobber the screen holes and cause the Apple to do strange things. Fixing this meant a rewrite of the page move routine to copy the text pages in and out in 4 chunks to skip over the screen holes. I found this problem before I'd gotten far. My Apple IIc wouldn't load files saved on my Apple IIe. Pretty easy fix. Page Editor handles text input and cursor controls using Git, Print, HTab, and VTab. Changing the math on these to support 80 columns is trivial, but swapping pages or saving documents leads to only half of the text being saved or moved. When in 80-column mode, alternate columns of text are in either main or auxiliary RAM. Page Editor has no idea about the aux RAM, so I had to teach it. This is where things got very interesting, and for a novice programmer like me, very difficult. Original Page Editor had all the pages stored contiguously in a single block of main RAM. To prove to myself that the concept of 80 columns was possible, I worked out how to save the aux RAM half of each page to the same address space in aux RAM that the main RAM page data lived. That made moving text pages around pretty easy. Do a copy inside main RAM, flip a couple of hardware flags, then do the identical copy in aux RAM with the same pointers. I had to hand assemble a little machine language helper to make the process fast enough to be usable, but it worked great. Next, I had to tackle loading and saving files. My first idea was to split the document into main and aux pieces, having each document be 2 files on disk. I thought that would work well in theory with DOS 3.3, but it ended up being too messy and impractical. What I really wanted was to save the whole file with one DOS command, but DOS 3.3 just wasn't up to the task. Now, ProDOS would definitely do this, but I had to rethink the entire process. Original Page Editor basically did a simple B save to dump the whole chunk of RAM to disk, but we know that won't work now because my pages are all over the place. This took a few days of consulting ProDOS programming guides and writing another machine language helper to do all the magic through the ProDOS machine language interface. The change used a ProDOS append command to save the first page in main RAM to a file, copy the aux RAM counterpart to a buffer in main RAM and append that to the open file, then repeat that until all the pieces were saved. Loading files was basically the same thing in reverse. And with that, I achieved my original goal, 80-column compatibility. The downside was that new Page Editor needed ProDOS and 128K of RAM, but I was okay with that. I didn't stop there, though. I still had a month left until Christmas, and I was determined to add every feature and squash every bug I could. Being an Applesoft affair, original Page Editor didn't deal well with files. When you saved files to disk, it added the name of your file to a master index file on that disk. When you wanted to open a file on that disk, it showed the list and asked you which file to open. The theory was okay, but prone to problems, as most operations were performed on an in-memory array of the names. If you swapped disks, then saved a new file, it would overwrite your index with the one from the wrong disk. Oops. I also had a consistent problem in entering the sort index routine. I typed and retyped it, but whenever I tried to sort the index, it would trash it and leave all of my files inaccessible. Somehow I doubt the program was published with such an obvious bug in it, but stranger things have happened. I did away with the index and added some machine language to directly show the current ProDOS directory on screen. But here's the kicker. Instead of saving files as generic binary, New Page Editor saves them with a custom file type. And when the directory is listed, it shows the page editor files in directories. Select your file and get exactly what you want. Swap the disk between saves or loads, and the worst you'll get is a ProDOS wrong prefix error. Heck, you can even save to any disk other than the program disk now. No more lost data. Once I had the big problems out of the way, the decision to add more pages was a no-brainer. I mean, there's at least 44K of unused aux RAM just sitting there empty. I had to rewrite the page swapping and file handling routines again, but now we can work with 22 pages instead of just 8. Instead of using the high-res screen area in main and aux RAM for pages, New Page Editor just uses one contiguous chunk in aux RAM. It made the math and ProDOS handling easier too. Not a lot of glamour in this one. Basically, the printer output didn't deal with 80-column text or characters after conversion. Another quick hack saved the day. While I was at it, I added the ability to choose what pages you want to print. Some of the new features I added to the program include consolidation of non-editing commands into one system to improve the editing and configuration experience. I added full file management, including load, save, and delete right from the program. It has advanced file features, like the ability to create and delete folders, the ability to change the current ProDOS prefix, and a utility to open original page editor files in New Page Editor. A new print page range feature was added, along with the ability to set the default printer slot. New Page Editor saves this in its preferences file, so it remembers it across reboots. I improved the online help page and added an about page. Centered text is now an option. Turn it on and Page Editor will center your text on the line right as it's typed. I mapped the delete key to, actually delete stuff? I changed the tab function from Control-T to the tab key. Why was it ever Control-T? Never made sense to me. I made the cursor keys move the cursor and made other commands change the page. Why would you use the cursor keys to change the page? Seems silly to me. Since we're working with 80 columns now, I had to drop support for flashing text. However, I added support for mouse text. You can throw Apple logos right into your documents now. A README file with details on how to use the program is now included. When everything was done, I went on a size binge. Extra characters were trimmed, lines were combined, and unneeded tokens removed. I spent at least 3 days on this alone. While I was at it, I rewrote several sections many times over trying to speed them up. Despite being AppleSoft, the program runs remarkably fast. When all that was done, I ran the program through a line renumberer and then compiled it with Beagle Compiler. At the start, development was done live on an Apple IIc Plus, but I found the editing process to be cumbersome, so I moved my development over to a PC. I have no idea how we wrote code in the past without a mouse and fast search algorithms. Anyway, subsequent coding was done in PSPad on Windows and then pasted into AppleWin for testing and operation. This made development very fast and easy. When I thought I had ironed out all the kinks, I dropped my disk image onto a USB drive and floated it over to my Apple IIe using a CFFA 3000 card. I even tested the printing features with a real image writer. I learned a lot from that program and from that Apple. How to write code, how to deal with frustration, how to stay determined, how to make friends, and how to invent galaxies. The program and the computer it ran on in some small way contributed to the person I am today. What was a teenage hobby became my career, and that program is still teaching me how to be resourceful, how to be creative, and how to persevere. Bruce Howell, wherever you are, thank you for writing such an interesting piece of code, and thanks to Nibble for publishing it. Oh, and thanks to Mom and Dad for somehow finding the funds to buy me the Apple. I still have that old Apple. It's the most reliable computer I own. And I still hack on Page Editor from time to time. It's a labor of love. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. And remember, sometimes it turns out, 8 bits is exactly what you need.